I'm also especially pleased to be here in Leuven because it's actually a place that produces a lot of very interesting research, not only on Islam in Europe, but more broadly on issues associated to gender, religion, ethnicity, anthropology. So I follow a lot of scholars who are based here. I read their work all the time and I quote them, so I'm very honored to be invited here. I am a hybrid as a researcher. I was brought up between the fields of sociology and international politics. So there is, in a way, two souls in my research that appear at different times. And what I'm presenting today, this evening, is more part, I would say, of the political side of my research. Whereas tomorrow morning, when I do the PhD seminar, I present something that has more of a sociological and social anthropology perspective, because it's more based on interviews I did with Muslim women. It's part of my book. Whereas today, I present my research interests in the field of institutions and international politics specifically. The reason why I've chosen to focus on this specific topic this evening is because I am aware of the topics that are studied and researched here, the angles that are adopted here at Leuven, the more anthropological side to the study of Islam in Europe. And also I know the work of the previous and forthcoming speakers in this series, and I think that a number of other issues I could have presented, have been presented, or are going to be spoken about in the near future. So I wanted to give you something a bit more different. So if there is political scientists, maybe they're going to understand, well, click more, I don't know, we'll see. So also, this aspect of my research, I think, is quite new, because the study of Islam and politics, Islam in Europe, but also Islam and politics more broadly, has normally been located in very small research fields. So if you study Islam and politics, normally you are a specialist of Islamism, and you study all these isms, and you try to look at ideologies and networks, and you put a lot of emphasis in that. And also, a lot of the research that has been produced on Islamism is about the Middle East and North Africa, although obviously there are implications for Europe as well, but a lot of that research is in that region and not so much focused on Europe. And a second aspect, normally, that is associated to the study of Islam and politics in Europe is the analysis of local political issues, like Muslim engagement with government relations on a national level, local council level. I've written about this, but there's also other people who are coming here, like Jonathan Lawrence, who have written about this. So I wasn't going to duplicate that. Thirdly, there is a very rich amount of scholarship about Islam in Europe and the difficulty of the supposed difficult incorporation of Islam in Europe from the perspective of the juridical sciences of law. And they try to look at, constitutional systems, at specific laws that address church-state relations or discrimination issues. And I think that is relevant. But while I was studying and researching all these aspects, which are indeed very relevant, I thought that there was basically another layer to be added to the story, a layer of the European system, the European political system, which is transforming the way in which Muslims are engaged in politics or in society, and is also partially transforming also how they are perceived and the possibilities that they have also for engaging on a political level. So I think that's the area that I'm going to present to you, the EU institutional system, not EU, but I don't mean by EU the sum of all the individual states, because individual states have very different constitutions and very different histories, very different identities and ideas about national identity, about national culture, which is very relevant. But when it comes to the European level, there is other dynamics that are added on top to the debates about Islam that happen on a local or national level. The reason why I've chosen Islam in the EU political system, it is because there is a growing literature in the field of politics, international relations, in particular European studies, that tries to make sense of the evolution of Europe and of the ongoing process of European integration by considering the structures that have been put in place here in Belgium and in France with the EU institutions, and by looking at the spillover effects of all this, and at the growing, basically, new political system, the new pan-European polity that is developing, that is not erasing individual political structure on a national level, but is adding another layer of bureaucracy, but also another layer of meaning and another way of understanding politics and another channel for engaging in the political field as a citizen of Europe as opposed to as a citizen of your national country. And I think that this is particularly relevant when you study Islam, to bear in mind this more cohesive, more holistic European perspective, because Islam as a global religion that has a lot of emphasis on the concept of the global ummah, on the solidarity of the Muslim community around the world, I think in a way there is a lot of space of possibility available for European Muslims to engage on this European level. However, this system has its own contradiction, its own ways of functioning, and this is what we are going to look at in a moment. So first of all, when we question, well, the reason why I've come to this is because I realized that in the last few years, in the last 10 years, the EU has become more and more interested in Islam as well. So I wanted to see why and how this has happened, between the lines. So when we ask this question of how on earth has Islam become an issue on the policy agenda of the EU policymakers, and why and how have some Muslim communities ended up mobilizing on a European level as opposed to the national level? What are the gains? What are the rational decisions of these political actors, the institutional actors, and the Muslim actors involved in this? So we have to acknowledge that although there is a big debate about, although the rising right-wing political parties in Europe keep claiming that Europe has strong Christian roots and that the culture of Europe is Christian, if you look at this political institutional settlement of the EU institutions and the structures in which the machinery of the institutions, how they work, how they think, religion has been there for a very, very, very short time, i.e. only at the beginning, when in the 1950s the European communities were formed and you had all these intellectuals from a Christian democratic orientation that were inspired, yes, they were inspired by Christian ideals to reunite and pacify Europe after the tragedies of the two world wars. But after that span, that initial injection of Christian values, actually the political system of the institutions, the way in which they have evolved, has kept embracing the liberal secular understanding of how politics works, has developed a self-understanding of international institutions that are supposed to be neutral and, if anything, maybe a bit anti-religion. So, from basically after the first few years of the beginning of the history of the European institutions, throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Europe has gone through a process of secularization on a social level, but also the institutions of the pillars of this growing political structure on a supranational level have also distanced themselves from these supposed religious roots. And so, in my view, there's been no space for any type of religion engagement, and there's been no major interest in religion. Not only no interest in Islam, there's been no interest in religion on the part of the institution for a few decades, until the 1990s, when things have changed, and now we're going to see why and how. So according to the treaties for a long time, the treaties that are the founding part, basically they are the international agreement through which individual states decide to build and stay together within the institutions of the EU. Religion has always been excluded, and the only small reference to religion has been in the article that refers to the fact that the European communities, now the European Union, is respecting fundamental freedoms and human rights, which include right to freedom of religion. So for many years, for many decades, religion has been outside of the picture, until with the Lisbon Treaty of 2008, which has sort of changed a few things in the workings of the EU, but also has changed some ways of understanding what the EU is. All of a sudden, we find an interesting article, very new and very unexpected, in this institutional structure that has developed through this secular, neutral lens of understanding itself. There is this Article 16c, which says that the EU recognizes the role of faith communities as well as the humanist and philosophical points of view, and recognizes and respects their role, recognizes that member states are responsible for managing day-to-day relations, so it's not taking over the role of the national state in terms of managing how freedom of religion is practiced. But there is a complete new, unexpected move, in that the third point of this Article 16 says that from now onwards the EU will engage in structured dialogue with faith communities, which is very new and unexpected, because the EU has positioned itself intellectually in this camp of secular neutrality and, if anything, hostility to religion. So my question is, why have we come here, and what does this mean, not only for religion in public policy in general, but specifically for my research interest, which is for Muslim communities in Europe? Are they behind the scene? Have they pulled the threads in order to have this? Has someone else been responsible for this? And even if Muslims have not been those who have pushed for this Article 16c, what are they going to gain? What implications does this have for Islam in Europe? So this is just a history. So in order to understand this, we have to look at the history of the evolution of the European communities, and in particular in the post-1992 period, because it's the period when the EC moved from a market to a political project, which encompassed many more political fields and entailed a decision on the part of the participating member states and institutions to send a signal to the rest of the world that Europeans were not just interested in trading with each other and having peace through this liberal economic system, but actually they wanted to move forward and project also in their politics, in the values of their politics, to express this solidarity and this desire and capability for peace also in the way in which they do politics, and to basically embrace more fully the political project of democracy in Europe. So in the course of the 1990s, sorry, this is not the rest, right? This is I put it the wrong way. In the course of the 1990s, we have a major person and two major things happening. A key individual, Jacques Delors, the president of the European Commission, who happens to lead the European Commission at the time when the EC is about to be transformed into the EU, and is understanding the necessity to reflect more philosophically, not just out of rational economic interest, more philosophically, what kind of Europe do we want? This person is also observing what is happening in Europe. He's observing that throughout the 1980s, European countries have been experiencing particularly strong waves of new migration, or rather family reunification, after the economic waves of migrations of the 1960s and 1970s. And this is really destabilizing, or rather completely changing the demographics of Europe, but also the role of the welfare state, and it's also basically calling Europeans to reflect on their own values about equality and freedoms and democracy, because they actually have to face on a day-to-day basis the fact that they have newcomers that are going to be part of this democracy and they are going to make claims similar to the existing citizens. So you have external events, so here, like I think yes, this you can read better. You have individuals that are grasping the historical change that is going through in Europe, and the key person is Delors in the late 1980s, and in fact he is much appreciated for his vision about Europe, that he stays as commissioner for 2 mandates, for president of the European Commission. Second, there is these structural transformations inside Europe, such as the move from the market, the limited, narrow, selfish interests of the market, into this broader, open, maybe more idealistic position of the political system of the EU. And you have these external events like increased migration flows, but also you have other external events that gradually mark more and more the character of this newly created political body that is the European Union. In the 1990s, you have all the crises in the Balkans and all the huge influxes of migrants and asylum seekers, but also these migrants and asylum seekers arriving into Germany, in particular into Germany and into Sweden, but also going in other countries. They happen to have a Muslim background, they happen to be white, ethnic whites, and so this is another way, another face of Islam coming into Europe through the migration process, through the crisis of asylum seeking. And this is again posing questions to European citizens, national governments, but also to the European institutions, who simultaneously in the 1990s, surprise, surprise, begin to develop a more coherent approach to migration policies, although you will agree with me that it's not a coherent approach yet, but they made initial attempts. A third major event of the 1990s is the fact that Turkey, after a long wait, Turkey made an application to become a member of the EU in 1987, which was rejected, but then reapplies. And in the course of the 1990s, as the European political system is already going through these internal transformations, the difficulties of managing the political chain. At the same time in which it is trying to face these migration flows, at the same time in which it is trying to understand what does it mean to be a democracy, to be a European citizen,